For all you photographers out there, I wanted to take a moment to give you a little advice. This is honest to goodness truth. Your camera is stupid. What I don't mean is that your camera's useless or unhelpful, just that it's more of a tool rather than a brain. Your camera is built to do one thing, and that's expose evenly for the scene in front of it. Now sometimes you're gonna get by on auto. It's probably happened before and it will happen again, but those circumstances are unique. It might happen when it's a sunny day and your subject is in the sun and the background is sunny and your camera goes, this is all the same lighting, I can expose properly. What happens if in the scene you're shooting, there's a bright window and what you actually want to photograph is the dark room? Well, your camera might get it right, it might expose for the dark room, but chances are it's gonna make a mistake. It's gonna pick one of those and it might not be the thing you want it to do. So, your camera does this by a process called metering. Metering is when it takes a reading of the room and decides what exposure to set things at. Now, your camera can do that a lot of different ways. For example, spot metering selects one point on the camera and exposes for that spot for neutral gray. For instance, that might be helpful if you're taking a portrait. You want that spot to sit on the subject's face and expose properly there and sort of ignore the background. The subject is the most important thing. Your camera has several different modes you can meter with, and we'll talk about those another time. What's important now is to know that your camera's making a decision that you should be making if your camera's on auto. That's why we always encourage people to shoot in manual, at least for a little while, to get used to what's actually happening, to know what the camera is deciding to do. What I do want to emphasize is that the real job of a photographer is to not use your camera as a brain, but to use it as a tool. Carpenters don't expect their hammers to just build a house. They bring additional knowledge to the table and build houses, knowing what they know and using their tools, they can get things done. In the same way, we can't get frustrated with our cameras when the picture they take isn't right. We're in charge of that, that's on us. And so rather than show up expecting your camera to do everything, you need to show up with additional knowledge. I know lots of people who start out in photography, including myself, and think that the gear they bought isn't good enough. Or they're 2 years down the road and they think the gear they've got isn't good enough. Here's the deal, it probably is. Most cameras these days are awesome. Even the camera on your phone is awesome. What most people don't have is a knowledge of how it actually works. So rather than spend money on new gear, my best advice for people is to actually learn the camera they have before forking over some cash. Now I know, disclaimer, this isn't always true. You need certain lenses to do certain things, but for the general photographer, before you get into specialized fields, the camera you have is probably good enough, and it's probably gonna serve your purpose if you can just learn how to use it better. What's the solution for this dumb camera problem? The solution is for you to be smart, and how you do this is learn how the camera works. Your camera deals with exposure, changing 3 different variables: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Lots of other things play into what happens in an image, but those are 3 things you really need to know a lot about before you can be a proficient photographer. Do you know that a higher aperture lets in less light but gives you more depth of field? Did you know that a higher ISO gives you more light but also adds grain to the image? Did you know that a longer shutter speed lets in more light but actually might cause blur in your image? If you do know all that, you've already got this down. Keep moving, keep using that all to your advantage. If that all sounds unfamiliar, your first step in learning your camera is to learn what those 3 variables do for you. The better you know these variables, the better chance you have of exposing an image as you wanted it, not as the camera guessed it. So, the truth is, your camera is stupid, and it's not getting any smarter. It can't, but you can. In the coming months, we're gonna go more in depth about what all this means. We can get more specific about aperture and ISO and shutter speed, and even answer questions you might wanna ask if you do that in the comments. If this was helpful and you wanna see other videos like it get made, please like and subscribe to our channel.